Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We are live and we are on YouTube for this Let's Talk British Wrestling. I hope everyone's had a wonderful week. God bless. And God willing, we're now going to go into an absolutely fantastic weekend. I thought I'll do myself a little live on the Philip Pole channel. The Philip Pole channel. Yeah, I thought we'll do ourselves a little live on the Philip Pole channel. Well, there you go. Hope everyone's well. And here we are on YouTube as part of the Philip Pole channel. And I am Phil Powers. There we are. Let me just introduce myself and tell you a little thing. I am a British professional wrestler who's toured about the British wrestling circuit for now the last 33 years. That doesn't make me experienced. That doesn't make me better than anyone else. That just makes me bloody old. That's all it makes me is old. Now, I normally do these videos on my other channel, which is Ring Slam Wrestling. First things first, let me just explain to you a few little things about Ring Slam Wrestling. Now, Ring Slam Wrestling was my channel that I would do a lot of talks like this. Now, what is happening now is I've actually changed the name. It's no longer called Ring Slam Wrestling. And the reason why it's no longer called Ring Slam Wrestling is because I'm sick to death of people making rude comments about the name Ring Slam. Well, when you think about it, maybe the name Ring Slam does suck a little bit. It's not really, I want something a little bit different to the name Ring Slam. So what I've come up with is a new name for that particular channel, which the name will now be for that channel will now be Ringside Wrestling UK. So if anyone's used to seeing me on what was the Ring Slam channel, now if you search for Ringside Wrestling UK, you will find me there. Exciting stuff. But you've actually clicked on to seeing me on this channel here, which is the Philip Pole channel, which is really now moving forward is going to be the channel that I do these lives on. Just a nice little bit of fun live talking. The Ringside Wrestling channel will now be just for films really and documentaries and the occasional little wrestling match. Now, if you see me on that channel, which many of you probably have, or you might not have done, I don't know how much of a following it's got over on that channel, to be honest with you. What I normally do is question and answer, where you ask me, people email me philwrestlinginfo@gmail.com. Remember that address, that's philwrestlinginfo@gmail.com. You email me there and you ask me a question for me to put on the show, whatever channel I do the show on, whether it's this channel or whether it's the Ringside channel. But I'm not going to be doing it on the Ring Slam channel anymore. The name's changed. All right, I'm going to get to the next question. Well, the first question. I'll get to the first question, which is, who is your favorite wrestler? Now, who's asked me that question is actually wants to remain anonymous. So an anonymous question. Anonymous questions on YouTube almost seem a little bit dodgy. It's like you're making up who's asking you the questions. Well, it's not the case. The person actually wants to be left anonymous. So let me answer you that question, Mr. Anonymous. My personal favorite British wrestler. Now, this is actually a hard one to answer because there's so many great and brilliant British wrestlers, or shall I say there has been so many great and British wrestlers, and there still is some great and British wrestlers. British wrestling isn't dead, but my personal favorite has to be Les Kelly. I think the reason being why my favorite British wrestler is Les Kelly is because I think he's the only wrestler, in my humble opinion, in Britain anyway, and I'll probably say the only wrestler ever to accomplish this, that is able to cross over being a legitimate, solid, tough grappler to being a comedian, to being funny, to being like very entertaining from his mannerisms. And like Les Kellett apparently was a really, really tough guy in real life, but Les Kellett appeared on wrestling bills in the 60s and 70s and the 80s up and down the country. He was a northern wrestler by all accounts from Bradford. That's where I believe his grave is as well. Wrestler from Bradford. And I think he, like, to me, he just completely and utterly ticked all of the boxes, all of the boxes. If you get a chance to watch any of these matches on YouTube, I highly recommend you do it. When you talk about timeless wrestling, the Les Kellett matches are completely timeless. He could be wrestling now and he wouldn't be out of place in the slightest. As a matter of fact, he would probably completely and utterly steal the show today, just like he done then. But no, Les Kellett, by far, in my opinion, the best British wrestler of all time, without a doubt. Okay, let me crack on now. Let me just remove that. Well, welcome to this live. This is the Philip Pole channel, and we are live, and we are talking about British wrestling. This is Let's Talk British Wrestling with me, Phil Powers, aka my real name, Philip Pole. Little bit of insight into that. I wrestle as Phil Powers, but my real name is Philip Pole. That doesn't make me schizophrenic. Us wrestlers aren't schizophrenic. Well, maybe a little bit schizophrenic, but not so schizophrenic that it's a complete split personality that we all have. A lot of wrestlers have two names, but my real name is Philip Pole, but my performance wrestling name is Phil Powers. Just the way the pendulum swings, that's what us wrestlers do. Now, let me talk to you about a new YouTube channel that I have got starting up, Sportside UK. Now, this is going to be a rough and tumble sports channel. If you get a chance, click onto it, Sportside UK. Now, there's a couple of wrestling videos up on it at the minute, but we haven't got into the full swing of it. Now, this is a channel in which I'm going to be interviewing and talking to people. If you want to be interviewed yourself, or you want to talk about sport, or you've got sport as a passion, particularly rough and tumble sports. But how do you define rough and tumble sport? Because in many ways, every sport is rough and tumble. And by the way, just so you know, Sportside Wrestling is going to be sponsored unofficially by Lucasade. That keeps you hyper. That keeps you hyper and keeps you going on long streams like this one. So that'll be Sportside. Going to be talking about lots of boxing on there, boxing at all levels, boxing at the top level, boxing at the lower level. Now, no complete expert, but I'm going to try and get experts here in the studio on Sportside UK, which will be an absolutely fantastic YouTube channel that's about to start. A lot of sports, not just from the UK, but it's going to be mainly themed about people that now live in the UK that are from abroad and why they've chosen the UK for their sport. Anything from bodybuilding to volleyball to tennis to rugby to pro wrestling to boxing to MMA to jiu-jitsu, all kinds of different martial arts. If you love sport, this will be the channel for you. Please give it a watch starting next week. Well, here we are on the Philip Pole channel. I am Philip Pole, aka Phil Powers, a British professional wrestler that has been on the circuit now for 33 years. And as I said earlier, that doesn't make me good. That just makes me incredibly old. I'm still quite good though. Don't put me down. I can still like throw a few holds here and there. You know, I've still got it a little bit to a little extent. All right, the next question. Again, it's from Dave from Dover. Dave from Dover. Good old Dave from Dover. You gotta love the White Cliffs of Dover, and you gotta love the ferry in to France, to Calais. My favourite bit about Dover is going back into Dover after being in France. Absolutely brilliant place. And he says, you have been a ring technician in setting the rings up for many years. You also build professional wrestling rings. Is your intention to carry on building professional wrestling rings? And out of all of the setups, what has been the most memorable, most stressful, or most disastrous wrestling ring setup you have had? Okay, yes, I am still set the wrestling rings up. I work pretty hard doing that. And if you want to buy a wrestling ring, you can always hit me up at philwrestlinginfo@gmail.com. But I'm well and truly happily obliging. I don't really advertise the fact that I'm building wrestling rings to the extent that I used to advertise that I was building wrestling rings, but I still do build wrestling rings. As a matter of fact, I'm building one in the next month. In the next month, I'll be doing another ring build going to Ireland, and I'll probably actually be filming the progression of that ring, just because we're living in a different era now. The era that we're living in is people like to film things as they're being made, and it's good memory for the person that buys the wrestling ring. So, yep, if you want to buy, or if you want to have a wrestling ring built, rather, get in contact with me, please. That'll be absolutely awesome, and we can make that one happen. Now, as far as like setting the ring up, what is the most stressful ring setup you have had? Okay, that takes some thought. There was one occasion where on the Thursday night, I had a show in Gravesend, which is the Woodville Halls. Now, to give you an idea of the time frame of this ring setup, the time frame on this occasion was, I believe, about 2005. Done Gravesend for promoter Brian Dixon, and then what I was doing was I was travelling from Gravesend through the night to Scotland, and then sleeping over in Scotland somewhere, and then driving down to Glen Rothes to the Rothes Halls the next day. The Gravesend show happened, everything fine. On my way through, I was picking up 3 other wrestlers to be part of the proceedings at the Rothes Halls, and they were going to be staying overnight in Scotland. So I got to pick wrestler A up, which I believe was Paul Tyrrell, and then I got to pick the 2 other wrestlers up, which I believe, if my memory serves me correct, was the UK Pitbulls. I don't think they've forgiven me for what was about to happen, and well, forgiveness is a wonderful thing, an absolutely wonderful thing, and you've got to have it in your heart to forgive somebody. But on this occasion, I don't think they did ever forgive me. I got as far as the hotel. We got as far as the hotel, and we all stayed over in a hotel. I think the hotel wasn't far past Berwick. So we stayed in this wonderful hotel in Berwick, which was just a travel lodge. Woke up the next day. Now, the weather was absolutely horrific. This was the middle of winter. I just want to add to this little story. This was the middle of winter. So the further up north you go, the worse the snowstorms are and the worse the occasion actually is. So we got up fairly early that morning. I think it was about 10:30, and we set off. I was driving along. I know what I need to do. I need to put some fuel in the tank. I think you know where this one is going. So as I put the nozzle in, put some fuel in the tank, started the van back up. Now, just so you're at the point and you've got the point fully, this was a ring job. I was doing the ring, supplying the ring for Brian Dixon at Gravesend plus wrestling, and then going on to the Rothes Halls in Glen Rothes to supply the ring for a show for Orig Williams in Glen Rothes the next day, with the stopover being in Berwick, picking Paul Tyrrell up in Harwich, and then I think I went all of the way to I think it was Sheringham or somewhere like that, or somewhere on the outskirts to pick the UK pit bulls up, who never forgave me. Let's carry on with this story. So as I'm at the fuel tank, I've like looked at it, and it's Q8, and I swear that I picked up the blue fuel nozzle, put the fuel in, filling it up away, start the van back up, as sweet as a nut. The van is running perfectly fine. Then for the next 30 minutes, we're driving along. Everyone at that moment in time liked each other. We all liked each other, and we was all lovers and looking forward to getting to the Office halls here with brothers on the road wrestling. I make my way onto a coned single carriageway. And as I'm on this, like in this single carriageway, cones either side, it's when it goes into one lane. I felt the van tug back a little bit, and I thought, oh, that's a little bit strange. And like there was always a little bit of a standing joke with myself and the pit bulls that like they would wear the van down where they were so big. So I just made a little joke. Oh God, the van's holding back again. The van's pulling, blaming it on them as a joke. As a joke, I was a lot more cocky and that when I was younger. 2006, I would have probably have been what 26 then, 24, 26, something like that. The van then started to pull back even more. Holy, now what is going to happen to this van? So it pulls back that little bit more, and then eventually the van conks out. Well, I managed to get it just on like the sort of like hard shoulder bit. Luckily in this area there was free recovery, so I went up to the phone box thing and reported that I'd broken down in there, and they told me over the phone somebody will be along shortly to pick you up. By this time, it's probably about 12:30, and I think we had about 2.5 hours to go to get to the Office halls. But it's Scotland, and Scotland is really vast. And what you might think is going to take you half an hour to 2 hours to travel, sometimes can take you 4 hours to travel, especially that time of year. So the van had broke down. Now at this moment in time, I thought, what's happened? Has the fuel pump gone? Has the fuel pump gone? Something's gone on the van. And like we didn't get argumentative in the back of the van, but obviously we were stressed out. I think me and Paul Tyrrell might have had a little argument, and there was a bit of argument going on with them amongst themselves, not just me. The guy eventually does turn up. He puts the vehicle on the back, and then he starts taking the vehicle somewhere. So we're in the middle of nowhere. He's taken the vehicle to a garage, and we're waiting for somebody to look at the vehicle. And like at this point, it's pushing 3 o'clock. We've actually stopped and got some food whilst we're waiting to see what they're actually going to do. By this time, it's like touch and go. Is the show going to happen? Shall I call the promoter? Well, I don't want to call him at 3 o'clock, but I do actually think the one of the pit bulls, God bless them, was actually at that point trying to find someone else in Scotland that might have a ring just to get the show covered. Anyway, a Scottish guy eventually turns up, and he's got a jerry can. Now they're being really cagey. They weren't really saying what was going on. And he goes to me, "What fuel did you pull in it?" And I went, "Well, diesel, of course." And he goes, "No, I won't do the Scottish accent. I don't want to embarrass myself. You're stupid." Well, I'm not even going to do it. He goes, "You Englishman, you put petrol in there." I don't think he said "you Englishman," but he looked at me like I was some kind of fool. And I'm like, "I'd never do that. I'd never do that." Then he proved to me that I put petrol in there. Well, the look of disgust on everyone's face that was in the van, it was probably one of the biggest mess ups I'd made in my life. Now, for what took this mechanic 20 minutes to fix, he then charges me 275 quid to take the petrol out, and they put a little bit of diesel in there, which was probably about enough to get me to the fuel station. But the van run perfectly fine after that, and boom, we made our way to the Rothes Halls in Glenrothes. We must have got there like after a horrific journey. We must have got there at 5:45, and I think Orig Williams was a different colour at that point, and everyone else was kind of stressing. But at the same time, no one was really rude to me. But I felt like the biggest prat on the face of the earth. I did try and keep it a secret that it was me putting the wrong fuel in, but I could imagine that with wrestling being wrestling, they would have said what had happened. And there you go. We managed to get the ring up. I think we actually got the ring up with about half an hour to go. Luckily, it was one of these ring carries where the ring goes straight on the floor, and like from the loading of the van. So you've got the back end of the van to where the ring goes was literally straight in. But I felt like the biggest idiot that had walked the face of the planet. I had put petrol in my van, and because of that, I'd nearly completely and utterly messed the whole show up. But luckily, the show happened. We got everything together. It all started on time, and then we made our way back after that one. And I think that was the time when we were on the way back and I started to fall asleep behind the wheel, pulled over, and everyone had people meeting them at the other meeting point. But because I was tired and fell asleep, it meant that I'd slept for like 4 hours on the side of the road, which meant all of the people picking them up on the side of the road had also been waiting there an extra 4 or 5 hours. And honestly, I felt like the biggest div on the face of the planet that particular weekend for doing that. Like maybe I was just overtired. I'd had a long, hard week, and the show at Gravesend, travelling all the way down to Scotland, was an awful lot. That's why I ended up selling so many rings to Scotland, because I just couldn't be done and dealing with the drive. So this man here, on that particular occasion, was probably the biggest pillock of the week. And I think it's fair to say that I've never been forgiven by certain people that were in the vehicle that week for my sin of putting petrol in the diesel vehicle. Now, you would have thought, like nowadays, you can't fit your nozzle in, but now nowadays you cannot fit the nozzle in the newer ones, but on the older ones, they just had a massive, great big hole where the fuel went in, and anything could go in there. I still, to this day, think that somebody swapped the nozzles over, or where it was a Q8 garage, I think that the petrol was a funny kind of blue on it. But that's me making excuses for myself. I was making excuses for myself the whole way back, but no, that was the week that I made a complete plonker of myself. And on that note, we're going to call it a day there. Don't forget, subscribe to this channel, the Philip Pole channel. If you get an opportunity, check out Ringside Wrestling UK, which is the new YouTube channel. And also in the next week, you're going to get to see us on Sportside. So thank you very much for watching this video, and over and out, and I will see you later. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well. Thanks.